I want to talk to you about some of the features of BioSoft Toolbox 4.0. It is set up to run very similar to previous versions. It is a software that is completely new as far as libraries and a lot of the processing from the previous versions of Toolbox that we've had. Um, and I do want to warn you that any scan session that you open up, you can open up scan sessions from any of the previous scan sessions you have that are captured under 3.0 or 2.5 in 4.0. But once you open them up in 4.0, that's the only place you're going to be able to open them up from this point forward. So it is compatible from back to forward, but not backwards. So just make sure that you understand that once you open something up in 4.0, you can't go back to BioSoft Toolbox 2, any of those versions, and open up that same scan session. So I've started the BioSoft Toolbox, and I want to be able to tell you some of the features that we have here, and obviously we're going to start up front with and probably just go through all of these tabs. When we start a new scan session, we are starting the ultrasounds and then going through a setup and new scan session. When we want to open a scan session, those are scan sessions that are already done. Opening a remote scan session connects you to the Biotronics Inc. server. And but the first ones that you will probably end up using are your custom animal information template managers and custom image measurement template managers. And we're just going to give you a brief rundown of what these are two features that are extremely useful for users of this software to be able to capture information that is pertinent and relevant to what your genetic improvement program is. So I've opened up the custom animal information template manager, and we're going to create a fairly simple one here, and we're just going to call this one on farm, or we can call it off test, or we can call it whatever you would like. It's just a way of recalling that. And so that's the name of the template. Now we're going to start adding into these fields under custom animal information fields. uh, Most of the time, one of the defaults of the software is ID. So, however you are identifying the animal, whether it be an ear tag or an ear notch or something along those lines, those are the two most common ways of doing that. Ear tags, obviously, being probably the number one. That field is already there, and it will be the primary field. It will be how the software names images. So we don't have to do anything usually with ID unless you have some kind of an alternate ID, say a secondary tag that you want to capture or something like that. But most of the time when we do this, we're going to want to know weight. So weight is one of those that is usually the first thing. So we'll put weight on there. We don't want it to remember it from animal to animal. It's not text, it is a number. Uh, it is helpful to be able to put a minimum value and a maximum value on these numbers, especially if we are typing in those numbers. So especially in pounds, where typically we end up having three digits, an animal that maybe weighs from 180 pounds to let's just go ahead and put that in on a minimum, and at the maximum 320 pounds, let's say. That's going to catch most of them. And what this will do is if you get outside of those ranges, it'll throw up a little red flag, hopefully draw your attention to it to make sure that it's correct. It is very useful if you get too many digits in the number, or if you're collecting information in metric and kilograms. Obviously, that's going to change a little bit. Our minimum values may end up being, say, 70 kilos, and our maximum values may be 150 kilos, or whatever you want to set up. And that's the beauty of this program. You can set it up to uh, do what you need it to do. Okay, so that's all we need for weight. The next thing that you may want to gather is breed. And breed is one of those that usually, if you start in on a pen, depending on how you pen your animals, maybe it's just a pen of Duroc gilts or a pen of Yorkshire boars. So a lot of times in that case, I'd want to remember it because that's not a something that I need to type every time. So it remembers it from animal to animal, and you do not have to put that in. When it comes to breeds, I usually recommend that you make that a selectable. And if say, let's in this particular case, you've got three breeds on your farm. So, what breeds are those? Well, let's see. Our terminal sire is Duroc, and you push OK, and then that is over here, and then we've got uh, Yorkshire or large white, however you'd like to do that, and push OK. And say the last one is Landrace in any order that you would like. And the nice thing about selectables is when we get to a new scan session, simply by you, especially when you have unique first letter identifiers, you just type in the first letter. The rest of it will fill out by itself. Or, if, like I said, if you are doing a pen full of a particular breed, that's going to be sufficient as well. So that one's good. So let's add another one. Sex of the animal. And again, I would just make that selectable. And we can go with male. Okay. Female. And you can select obviously boar, gilt, whatever fits your. Uh, I like male, female, and barrow or a castrate or however you want to do that. Again, if you can keep that to a unique first letter, that's all. Sometimes you have to type in that field to get it to change. So now we have male, female, and barrow in the sex, and that's usually obviously one of them that we want to remember as well. So there's a fairly simple way, and I usually like to make something that just says comment. So if there's something going on, and just leave it as text, it works well. That way you can put in anything. If there is a defect that you want to type in, people typically will also put in pen number or building or farm or there. So the sky's the limit on how many numbers of custom animal information fields you want. I would warn you, the more that you get, the more information that you're going to have to fill out at shoot side, which may slow you up. So keep it to the essentials, and I think you'll get along very well with this. And so when we get that one done, we can just save and finish it. Or if you've got other templates you would like to build that you want to add more things, you can build those, name it something else, and go from there. So now we're going to look at our next custom template, custom image measurement template manager, and we'll click on that, and it'll come up with something that looks fairly familiar to what we had before. And so say we've got different measurements you want to take on different groups, or maybe just one measurement that you're going to do for everything. So let's go with one that's saying we're going to do back fat, area, and IMF. Push OK, and then we're just going to add those over here. So it's going to be back fat, and which is a linear fat. We select that from this drop down menu and add loin area. Again, we're going to drop down that menu, select area, add IMF, and we'll select that. And we're going to save that one. And so maybe we want to do something a little different on some other groups. So we can go in here and select, we're just going to do longitudinal image and have fat depth, loin, or let's just call that muscle depth. Everybody measures that just a little bit different. And IMF. And go OK. We're going to add this. So fat depth. And it's going to be linear fat. And because we're doing longitudinal images, or sagittal images, we're going to click this assist fat depth. There are some features to this program that will do that automatically that way. Let's add another one for muscle depth. And we're going to select linear muscle for that measurement type, and then we're going to do IMF. And again, select that from the drop down menu. Save and finish. And there again, you can do as many of those templates as you would like. So how that will work, and this, we don't have an ultrasound hooked up to this particular computer at this point, so that when you go to a new scan session, and it's going to attempt to find something here, but obviously we've got no capture device detected, but we have over here the list of our templates. Custom animal information template on farm, that's the only one we made. We just click on open and that becomes an open template. When we go to back fat, let's say we want to do this one, and then we open that one, it opens that up, and then so at that point we can this template and this template are going to be available for this scan session, and it will be consistently there for you every time you open that scan session. The last time you open these is going to come here, but you're going to have to open them up each time you do that. You also have the option of going with metric measurements or selecting English measurements, and those are interchangeable. You can change them at any time. Obviously, once you get started, you're going to select one for each location, and that is going to be saved for that. The session ID, the default, is always going to be the date. We happen to be doing this on the 19th of March, so that is the date that will pop up there. And once everything is correct here, you can click OK, and then you're ready to go to scanning. But at this point, because we don't have an ultrasound hooked up, I'm just going to push cancel and let that go away. And we're going to talk about some of the other features of this software. And for that, we're going to have to open up a scan session. And the first scan session I'm going to open is going to be one with longitudinal images. And these happen to be last rib images. Doesn't matter if they're 10th rib or last rib, and I'll show you some of each. The defaults, like I told you before, we have an area measurement, we have fat depth, we have loin depth, and we have IMF. So those are all the defaults. You don't have to build a template for that if that is actually what you're going to do. Um, you can go to assist with depths. This is something that gives you the opportunity to place lines or let the algorithm attempt to find those lines and let you make any final adjustments. And on this particular one, I wouldn't make any adjustments at all. Uh, One of the things that you can do with this software is you can select where your measurements are going to be taken at. Um, And if we look at depth assist settings, so it'll pop up with this window here. So we are scanning at last rib, and we want to, if we want to scan from the second to last to last rib, the fourth last rib, that's great. On this particular one, we had it set up originally as a trapezius on the left, which means just the anterior portion of the animal. It actually is on the right on this one. We can tell because the muscle striations always go down and towards the head. So we'll go ahead and change that one and assist with depths, and it automatically sets these depths for this width. And this is an approximation, depends upon the technician's ability to get 4 ribs in, and it will take an average fat over this area and an average loin depth. This one happens to be set to go to the bottom of the intercostal muscles. If you want to change that and not include the intercostals, we'll just take that check mark off, push OK, and when we do a depth assist again, we can see that these intercostals are not included in that, which is a lot of times why I talk about muscle depth, because we're not actually just measuring loin, we're measuring also intercostal muscles with that. And then we can see that there's the top of the skin, the bottom of the skin, 3 fat layers, 3 discernible fat layers. I will say that let's just look at a few different examples here along the way, just to kind of give you an idea what's there. When we push assist with depths, we're getting good placement of lines on this particular animal, on this one. Um, and I normally like, if I am doing mass interpretations, manual interpretations, I just usually take one trait. And you can do whatever you want on this. If you want to do IMF along with it, we can do that. Um, and typically we will use 2 boxes for this. And we're going to set those boxes in places where we have good consistent texture. And if you want to look at individual image data, we can click on this tab, and we can see that this particular image was at 2.3. The next image that was collected for this particular animal, once I get done setting boxes, 2.4, 2.2, 2.0, and an average of 2.2. So we get individual image results here, and we get average image results here. Now say you want to take one out, there's an outlier that just doesn't fit. With this kind of spread, there's no problem with leaving all of them in, but say there was one that was way different, that really doesn't, it was a blurred image or something like that, we can simply just check mark it. We can also, on this view, if you would like to do some kind of an image audit, you can call it acceptable, reject, reject with a reason, say it was blurred. And then when we go back here to see this, we see it's rejected and blurred. Also, what you saw there, we can save this image as a BMP. We'll save it to in the same file structure, and I'll show you that file structure after a bit here. You can save the image with the overlay, which means you'll save where the depth lines are, and you can also delete an image if you would like to do that. When we go back to this first animal that we were on, um, we can see those boxes are still up there, so we just move it to the area that we want. This animal has got a little bit more intermuscular fat than the last one where he was around a little over 2%. This one's a little closer to 4%. So a little bit of variation there. And you can either go back and go assist with depths, or one of the options, you can process the IMF on image load, where it will just, wherever the boxes are, it's going to process it every time you change images. Or assist with depths on image load, we can click on that, so that as you move from this animal to this animal, the lines are already set. You don't have to go over here, they're here. And you can advance to the next animal by right clicking anywhere within this region, or by clicking on the image here. Either way will advance that. And you see we're getting very similar results here. And then we've got an average loin depth, average fat depth, and an average IMF on that particular animal. So if we drop down to another animal, these boxes are going to stay there. If we happen to check process IMF on image load, everything stays here. It does the fat depths, and this one is doing a good job as well of placing those lines. And you can go through. So you can find however is the most efficient way for you to manually interpret images, if this is your preferred method of, and we'll always see a little bit of variation, uh, and we'll see variation based on box placement as well. But we're taking 4 to 5 usually independent images to determine this IMF. Usually one image is sufficient for fat depth and loin depth, or for loin area, or for whatever for that. But when it comes to just fat and muscle measurements, usually one image is sufficient. So as you go to animals, you can just continue to make some changes as far as box placement to make sure and get to areas that represent typical texture. And there again, we're seeing a little bit of difference here. There was one image that had a little less loin depth to it. Now that one I would probably take out. Looks like fats are pretty similar, but these others represent where that loin depth should be. But these are animals that do a very good job. Where the depth assist, you don't have to change it very much as long as we have those 3 discernible layers. I'm going to open up another scan session. I'm just going to say that there is a little bit of a warning here on some of this. If you happen to have extremely lean hogs where there are not 3 discernible fat layers, the algorithm is going to struggle a little bit to find some of those. Now you can see on these images we've flipped around on the image. The trapezius is this way because we went from striations going this way to this way. So we need to make adjustments to this. Our trapezius location is on the left. We're going to measure fat in the same location. And let's just for the sake of something different, we're going to just say include in loin depth the intercostals. And if we go process IMF on image load and assist with depths on image load, when we go in, and this one is doing an adequate job as well. It's finding these bottoms of these intercostals. It's finding, on this one we have 3 discernible fat layers. When we can't find 3 discernible fat layers, where this third layer kind of gets lost with the second layer because these animals are so lean, this is what we're going to get. And what you can do is simply slide your cursor over that dotted line and slide it up. And I would make a little bit of an adjustment on this as well. So the operator, the person doing the interpretation, has the final say on where those lines are, and that's the way it should be, because there are certain things that we're going to find in these images that from a single image standpoint, doing manual interpretation, the operator needs to be able to make those changes to it. Again, next image, same thing. We need to be able to move those lines. A bit high there, so. And this one's a little bit low as well, so. Now if you're doing IMF on these, again, it's the same situation. We're looking for good texture. We're getting about 2.4 on that particular image. There again, same pig. We just don't have that discernible third layer. We're going to have to slide up and move those lines slightly. This line's a little bit closer. And just be consistent in your depth placements and your IMF. And we're getting similar results as we move down on that. Now I want to also show you when it comes to interpretation. I'll open another scan session here. And those last 2 scan sessions were Exego images. You'll have different locations that you've made it when you made the scan session originally, and then within that there are different dates and different places. Let's do 10th rib one. A little different scanning technique here, but this also gives us a little different way of looking at how we do interpretations. And so for this one, where we've got a cross-sectional image, and we've actually got the loin area that we're taking a slice of here. If we want to measure the area of this, and this one is I'm not sure which is this one's set up as English or metric. Either way, what you can do is click that area icon, take your cursor, and then trace this loin. And the software will predict what the area of that is. Something like that. It's set at metric, 64.5 square centimeters is what that measures. And also you can do fat depth. And fat depth on swine is usually from the top of the skin to the top of the loin. And so fat depth is 18.7 on this particular pig. Now if you want to do, you could even do a manual loin depth on this as well. If you wanted to try and measure what the loin depth is, you could measure from the top of the loin to the bottom of the loin. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can measure this, and whatever your needs are, the software is designed to be able to handle that. And if you want more than just one fat depth, we can do that. You can set up a custom animal template that will say 10th rib fat, and the next one will say last rib fat, or however you want to set that up. It's flexible. One of the key features of this software is that flexibility and being able to achieve whatever your goals are and to do it efficiently. And so as we go down through this, we've got a 10th rib image here, and if we go IMF, and these have previously been interpreted, the boxes are set, and this is an exapad image is what it is. It's not exago like the last two sessions we looked at, but the anatomy is all similar and the same. These are just taken a little farther forward at 10th rib. So as we get to the next animal, we see here's an animal that has quite a bit less muscle area in it, where the last one was about 65 square centimeters. This one's going to be considerably less. 42.7 square centimeters. And if we measure fat depth on this one, last one was about 18. This one's a little fatter at 21.6 millimeters. So again, we can do lots of things with this. If we go IMF, this animal doesn't have a lot of IMF in it. 0.7, 0.8, you can see it. We've got a little variation, that's normal as we move through this. And that's a quick interpretation of what we have here. The depth of the is set by the probe. What the probe is set to 140 millimeters on this particular exapad. We can see these are marked out in centimeters, 5 and 10, and plus 4 is 140. The probe is the L3130, and those are the things we can see on that. Stream and freeze are usually part of the scanning process, and capturing the image is part of that scanning process as well. But we'll go back to our menu here. If for some reason, especially with Exago or something happens to the Ethernet cable and it gets wiggled loose or something like that, and you need to reinitialize the capture device, you can do it from here. If you need to edit something in the scan session, click on that. This original scan session information that was part of the new scan session will come up, and we can make adjustments. If we need to add a measurement area place, we can add it here. If we want to switch from metric to English, we can do that here. It'll warn you and say, yeah, that's fine. We can go back and look at that, and all of a sudden it's at 6.6 square inches, 85 hundredths, and the same with this one when it was 74 hundredths. Loin depth and area on that one was 10 square inches. So it'll automatically set that, and you can go back and forth on that all you want. The software also allows you to import animal data. You can take an Excel spreadsheet if there is particular data you want to keep track of with the animal. We've got clients that like this feature. It allows them to keep a lot of data in the same place as they add to it. As we add images to that animal, it all stays together. And that certainly can be done as well. It's imported as a text file. And then it will, you can import them into specific fields, and it will come up on your software and be part of that database. Also, exporting interpretation results. When we get done scanning and we get done interpreting, this is the screen that comes up. And these are all of the available output fields that we have at this point. The more fields that you put in, the more fields you're going to have to select from, especially if you're importing from a spreadsheet, say. And you can customize whatever kind of a report you want to have come out by simply saying, okay, I want the ID and and you can put it in a particular order. If we had weight here, we could pull weight over. So we're going to go fat depth and area, and we didn't really do any line depth on that. And if you want to put timestamp in, timestamp is a very good way if you have something wrong with an ID that you don't discover until later. A timestamp can help you isolate that problem to where the problem occurred, and you can go back and fix those a little more efficiently and quickly. So timestamp is one of the things that we have there that can help us out quite a bit. And then once you get a particular template made, you can save the template, give it a name, it'll pop up here, and then you'll have variable kinds of templates. We also have different outputs where we can look at individual image results and also image results merged with animal results, or just strictly animal results. This is probably the most common outputted file format is the animal results file. Usually when we get done, that's what everybody is interested in importing into their genetics program. And then once you get that done, we export the data, and it automatically saves it to a text file, which can be imported into Excel again, typically, and then converted to Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to go ahead and get out of that. Also, the timestamp. Because I imported these, I don't think there's a timestamp on it, but if you check this box here, the animal list will be in the order that they came in the chute. Whatever order you scanned them in will be the order that they come here. Otherwise, this will be, if you uncheck it, it's always going to be in the order, numerical order. So we've got two different ways of looking at that. That's very useful in helping sort through when we don't have things that match up as well as they need to. Okay, so options, we've covered depth assist settings, we've covered process IMF on image load and assist with depths. There's different things you can do. You can stop streaming on image capture, unfreeze the stream on image capture. And also, if you've got multiple screens, you can display the thumbnails in a separate window so that these images here could be on a separate screen on your desk as you're doing interpretations, or if you've got a separate screen that you want to be able to see those thumbnails, we do have a way of doing that. If you don't have that need, you can just click on either one of these tabs here and it will pop up to whatever you want there. And there's also a processing overlay viewer. And assist with depths. And these depth assists on this particular system. And we are at 10th rib. I should show you that. When we get the depth assist, this is 10th rib. These were last rib settings, and say we want to go we have options of going 11th, 12th rib, 10th, 11th. Let's just click that one, 12th and 13th rib. And you can see where the measurements are going to be. They're going to be farther back on these settings. If you go between 11th and 13th, you see this spread out. Well, they're going to be averaged over a little larger area. And these ribs are just approximate depending upon technician placement of the transducer, whether they get 4 ribs in or not, or whether they correctly identify where 10th rib is. All of that will play a role in that. and whether the trapezius is on the left or the right. Looks like we're on the right this time. We better change that. And then it shows where an example image of relatively where those measurements are going to be taken. Click OK. Assist with depths. Somewhere in that vicinity there. And if you're including intercostals, that would be like right there. There again, the operator is going to have final say on where to place those lines if they're not placed correctly. And if for another reason you know somebody wants to have a separate screen up and running and they want to see these overlays, we can do that, and then you can just slide that over to another screen. Unclick that, get rid of that. So you can also, with this little image here, we can save the screen to the image file. We have the option when I showed you before on this, when we right click on the image, we can save the image as a BMP, we can save the image with the overlay, or you can delete the image while being on the thumbnails. This particular button here will save the whole screen. And it will save it in this fashion here under scan session, swine, sample, 10th rib, saved screens. And so I'm going to save that one. And we're going to open File Explorer. And under C drive, scan sessions, if you have both beef and swine, this will show up. These file structures are set up when the first time you make a scan session. And we happen to be under sample, and this was the file we were under. And this is the file that the data is all written to. These are all the images. If I open this one up, you can see the thumbnails there. If we go to this one, that's the screen I saved. So you've got a lot of different options here. So if there are issues that we need to look at, or from an image audit standpoint, we want to see everything that you're doing, or you want to be able to save this, put it on PowerPoint or whatever your needs are, there's a lot of different ways of saving these images, saving that data, and we can accommodate pretty much a lot of different ways that you want to do that. So anyway, going back to the software, that kind of covers everything on from a software version. I will take note of this. The license, if you click on it, and this is something that is available on 4.0 as well as some of the later versions of BioSoft Toolbox 2. When you click on license, this will give you the serial number of your security dongle or your security key lock, which allows you to open and use the software, along with the expiration date. IMF counts are put on your security dongle. And this one happens to have 487 left on it, and DDI is enabled on it. So there's some good information there. If you lose your tape or something, or however you identified your key lock and you don't remember the serial number, this will tell you what that serial number is, so that when you call into the office to buy more IMF counts, you'll know what that serial number is. And when that expiration date is, and if you're on a subscription program, uh, where that is at. So that's always good information to have. And we just have our legal notice there. So that kind of takes care of all of the software features as far as interpretation. Let me go back to just file, new scan session, like we're setting up a scan session here. Again, I do not have a ultrasound hooked up to this. We If you want a new location ID, we can type one in. Just put in trial, and it will save that ID. So it'll become part of that drop down list. And then again, if you want to rename the session ID, you can do that as well. If you're good with just having the date there, that's good too. Again, we want to go open that on-farm template, and we want to open that backfat area and IMF template, and go OK. Let everything load up. It's going to tell me it didn't load the settings because there is no ultrasound to it, obviously. So, um, but then you can go next animal. Brings up the next animal, and this again was what I told you before was the default. If it's 100, say the tag number is 1256, or it could be a text as well. Say you want to put in, it's a yellow tag, a yellow visual tag, yellow 1256. Also, if you have RFID tags, um, these radio frequency tags, we can automatically populate the field from that by using a wedge program to simulate keyboard input so that you can just scan the tag, and then as long as this field is open, you can, and you're going to be in this animal ID field here, it will automatically fill that in for you. So that's a huge savings in time. It's also limits the amount of human error in typing, especially some of these longer, say, ID tags that are good for that are country specific. In the United States, those are 840 tags. And then you use the tab key on your. You can use the tab key, or you can just right click with a mouse to go to advance to the next field. And we said the weight was going to be, let's just say, 123 kilos. Breed is it was a Duroc, and again, simply by typing in the first letter of that breed, it'll fill in the rest of it, and it happens to be a male, and we go from there. And say the comment was this was going to be a culp pig, say it's unsound or something like that, and go OK. It goes to this. You are ready to capture images, and if we were hooked to the ultrasound, we would be able to stream and get that image here and be able to capture images, which would generate thumbnails here. And once they're there, there's nothing else that you have to do as far as saving the images. The software basically runs all on Windows. It will not run on Apple. Windows seems to be a very commonly used operating system, and so what we've chosen to use, and we can adapt to a lot of different versions of Windows. Some of the older versions work just as well as Windows 10 and others. So we're going to look at Toolbox 4.0 and the image buffer. We'll go ahead and start this Exapad and start Toolbox 4.0 in there. Go to full screen. We're going to start a new scan session. And you just have to be somewhat patient here as all of the settings are being loaded and checked, and everything is getting set up for this new scan session. There'll be a couple of instances where we'll have to wait for settings to load. This is just the first instance, so just be patient and it'll all be taken care of for you. So there we've got the new scan session set up, and we're just going to select test as where we're going to write this file. The date is the default, the 26th of May on this particular one. And this one we are going to open up a couple of templates that I've previously made on another occasion, and again we're going to wait until those all the ultrasound settings are loaded properly, and the software will tell us when that process is completed. It is, and we just click OK when this dialog pops up, and then we'll start to stream. So we'll either click on that, or you can use the hotkey, which is S, stop and stream, but we've enabled the streaming to come through the software. We click on next animal, and we're going to type in 1 just as a random number, and I'm just going to scan my arm. We don't have a pig here in the office, so next best thing is and most convenient thing is my arm that's here. So we're going to run a loop on this, and so with the image buffer we're going to collect, it's going to be about 9 seconds worth of scanning, and it's 200 images that will be in this buffer when you let it run the full 9 seconds. And as soon as I have pushed the freeze button, you see that progress bar there with a pointer on it that we can scroll back through and collect images from this buffer. I've collected one. We're going to scroll back a little bit more, capture another one, and again we can either select that with the mouse and click on that, or we can use a hotkey on a keyboard of C for capture image, and you'll see the thumbnails being propagated down below there every time we do that. For most IMF images, we're going to be probably collecting 4 to 5 images. But this feature works very well when we're doing IMF in pigs, because we don't have to collect individual images like some of the older technologies that we had from a live stream. And as you watch, I'm just going to do that process again and go to number 2 and enter that, and we're going to start scanning again. But on IMF, you can just let that buffer go the full 8-9 seconds, and then just go back and select the images you want to capture, the independent images. There is no compression in these images, so they work very well for going back and doing your interpretations later, or at present if that's what you prefer to do. But you would have to disable the streaming to get those functions to start working, whether it be fat or muscle or IMF. At this point we're just capturing images and not trying to do any interpretation. So we've captured 3 images, captured 4 images on this particular one, but this buffer is a very handy resource.